and also very young population, which means that in the year ahead, the growth could be really consistent, despite what could happen, for exogenous factors. As I said, the second important factor for the importance of Vietnam in the economy is the fact that Vietnam is actually created in the global, I would say, the global markets. This has been a great result that has been join the W. And basically, with this intense activity, diplomacy activity, Vietnam has signed several number of free trade. Beyond that, Vietnam is part, as you know, of ASEAN, which is an association of countries in Southeast Asia that basically encompass a region with something like 600 million consumers. So it's an economic area where there are no trade barriers. But then, beyond that, Vietnam has signed multilateral and also bilateral free trade agreement. Regarding the multilateral, there is a very important agreement that has been Vietnam and the European Union, and because of this, it could be something that could have some effect for our Italian as you know, free trade agreements are basically agreement that has three goals. The first one is to eliminate tariffs. The second one is to make custom and trade easier. And in particular, the third one goal that has been achieved with the and the Vietnamese. So basically, our manufacturing companies, this is something that is very important because it basically the treaty has fully liberalized the duties and the custom duties that are applied on the import of machinery and also in the sector of textile. For other sectors like the wine and spirits, car, there are still some duties, but they will be phased out over a period of 10 years. And basically, we can say that the effect, the consequence of this treaty can also be seen in the statistic. Because if we look at the export data regarding the Italian at the level of 2019, so at the pre-pandemic data. And according to some forecasts, it seems also that in the next 5 years, the total import of Vietnam can grow 50%, which means that this market is open, for companies that are targeting the consumer that they're living in these countries. As I said, actually, a factor that is important, and that is for sure at the center of the discussion in the C-suite of the multinational company. We are living basically in an area where, unfortunately, there are political tensions. It has to be considered that But anyway, a sign that Vietnam is somehow positively affected by what we are seeing as geopolitical tension is the data regarding the foreign direct investment. We have heard our representative of the Vietnam minister that was telling about the big jump in foreign direct investment into Vietnam. If we look better at the data that are coming from the minister, we also can see. Thank you so much. Yeah. The next slide. No. We can see that if we rank country. There are the biggest Asian economy. So we have Korea, which is by far as the largest investor in Vietnam. We have Japan, and we have the $80 billion of investment. And of course, there is also China, ranked 6th. But the value for China cannot be because Chinese are going also abroad, not necessarily with direct investment, but they like to have an intermediate holding company, like in Hong Kong and Singapore. So if we, a large portion of the investment that are going to get from Hong Kong and from Singapore, and we consider them part of China, we, to a certain extent, we will have that also Chinese investments are the same range of Korean and Japanese, which basically this means that there is in progress a strategy just the Asian economy that in case something goes wrong in this, probably in a facility in Vietnam could be an interesting and for sure a safe backup plan. So far I've described what happened with regard to other countries. But what about Italy? Actually, Italy, unfortunately, we are only in the 30. For sure, yes. Probably there are some reasons. If I have to pick one, then why we are so low in terms of so you cannot see here, but even if we are ranked with our European countries, a smaller country like Belgium and Denmark, which are far ahead than us. So why are we not performing as we should, considering that we are the 8th world power in terms of also part of the G7? Thank you. We think, okay, one of the reasons in our view is that the Italian company have a very specific strategy when they go abroad. If we, considering all the overseas market, not considering the Europe one, usually the Italian company go abroad not with a goal of reducing the cost, and neither with the intention of create integrated value chain across several jurisdictions, like probably the Korean and the Japanese, in order to reduce the cost. The Italians go in a market because they want to expand their sale in that market. And as a confirmation of this, there is an interesting statistic of ISTAT, which is the National Institute of Statistics for Italy, that has discovered that if we look at the sales of the Italian companies that are located abroad, 66%, so it means 2/3 of the sales of the foreign, of the subsidiary of the abroad, are sales that are made in the same country where they are located. So clearly, we are not in Vietnam as we should, because until now, Vietnam was not considered an interesting destination in terms of market demand. But if this is true for the past, after what we have just heard, we do believe that in the near future, because of the treaty signed for the openness and integration of the market, Vietnam should really achieve quite an interesting result in terms of market demand. So if we have to find one reason why an Italian company should come to Vietnam, is because there is a higher demand that is growing and is looking at Italian products. And this for sure is something that has to be considered. And later on, we also will see, maybe we have already understood, by the speaker before me, which are the sector. But I would say that there is actually other 3 reasons why Italian companies should come to Vietnam, which are, I would say, not so apparent. One good reason, and that is basically, you can find, many times from people that are working in Vietnam for a long time. If an Italian company comes to Vietnam, this is a place where as you can see, is full of Japanese and Korean companies that are making a lot of business and a lot of activity. The Italian economy is basically an economy that is fully ingrained in the value chain of the German economy. But we barely do business with Korean and with Japanese. They are too far, different culture. I mean, it's really. Vietnam could be potentially a destination where the Italian company, they can start to dealing with Japanese and Korea and to see whether our product can fit in the value chain of the Japanese and the Korean. At least is attempt. And this is one other reason. A second reason is that, as we have seen, Vietnam is in the middle of Asia, Southeast Asia, in the center of the Asian Association. So this is another interesting area that should be somehow pursued by the Italian companies. And so why don't start with a hub in Vietnam to serve the whole region? Finally, a third reason is the one that we have seen that the Chinese and Korean and Japanese are pursuing in case of geopolitical tension. If you have backup facilities in Vietnam, it could be a good starting point for the future. So going to the end of my presentation, I would like basically to, I would say, briefly mention what are the sectors. So we have already heard by our consul, sorry, our ambassador. I'm using Hong Kong. We have only a consul, so, and by of the chamber. So the green technology, for sure, and the modernization of agriculture, absolutely. And if we talk for small and medium enterprise, because Italy is full of this type of companies, other sector that can be interesting can be sectors that can easily remember because they start all with F. Because basically, if you look at the type of exports that Vietnam has, you will find fashion and apparel, you will find furniture, you will find footwear. And so if you add to this also food and beverage, you may have a quite large picture of those sectors that are really growing and that, where we are also fortunate to have excellence quality. I mean, the Made in Italy is all over known in the world in these 4 or 5 sectors. And of course, just to reach conclusion, we are not talking only about companies that do B2C, that they address consumer business. We are also talking of companies that are doing B2B. So this is really a huge market for those who are engaged in the machinery and equipment sector for all these sectors that I have mentioned. So to conclude, I would say that for this sector, Vietnam is for sure a destination that has to be taken into consideration, not necessarily for the market that is growing, but also for other important reasons that I've just mentioned. So having said that, I thank you for your attention and I pass the mic to my colleague. Thank you.
So first of all, I want to join to Alderigo to thank you so much to attending this event, and I especially want to thank also the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Vietnam and my friend Alessandro and this team of Fidinam, because they give us a great support to organize this event. It's not easy, but they do a really great job. So really, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here today with so many distinguished guests. So I'm very honored to have the chance to do this speech. And in the interest of time, I will try to be very, very quick in order to also leave the time to my colleague and to the colleague of Fidinam. So, with my speech, I want to very briefly talk about and doing a comparison about the mostly used way in which Italian investment can be configured when they decide to invest, for example, in Vietnam, but also in other countries in Asia. And I want to give some information, some general overview and highlights on the main important tax implications related to the income that usually are the first to concern an investor when decide to invest abroad, that are the cash repatriation income, so the dividend, and the income related to the exit strategy when they decide to exit from the investment. So I'm talking about the capital gain on the sale of the participation. So of course the information are very general, but then you need to consider what's happened case by case. So every time it is important to have a deep analysis in order to understand what's going to happen. So in general, when we have an investment from Italy to the Southeast Asia, in this case in Vietnam, we can have two kinds of investment: direct investment or indirect investment. In case of direct investment, usually the corporate shareholder, the Italian corporate shareholder, invest incorporating an entity in Vietnam. In this case, of course, we need to understand what's happened in terms of tax impact at the level of Vietnamese company when they repatriate the dividend, and what's happened in Italy when they receive the dividend. So in Vietnam, when they pay dividend to Italy, usually there is no withholding tax on this repatriation. And when Italian company receive the dividend, in principle, the dividend is taxed to 1.2%. This is the effective tax rate. So this is what's happened in terms of dividend. When Italian company decide to sell its investment in Vietnam, we need to understand also here the tax impact, that in Vietnam the sale of the participation is taxed to 20%. And in Italy, if it's possible to benefit of a participation exemption regime, the taxation of the capital gain is 1.2%. Now we have to say that is in force between Italy and Vietnam. Also we'll see later between Vietnam and Singapore and Vietnam and Hong Kong, a double tax agreement. But the double tax agreement does not prevent the double taxation of the capital gain when the sale of the Vietnamese company is done. So this means that the capital gain will be taxed both in Vietnam and in Italy. And in Italy it's possible to recover partially this, the tax paid in Vietnam through the mechanism of the tax credit. So this is what's happened in terms of dividend and capital gain for a direct investment. In case of an indirect investment, as I say, usually when from Italy you decide to do an investment in Vietnam or other countries in Southeast Asia, usually the principal hub, the principal regional hub that are used are located in Hong Kong or in Singapore. This is the most common, and usually they are the one that are used for doing the investment in all the region of Southeast Asia or China, for example. So planning an investment through an holding company based in Hong Kong for sure is very convenient if your subsidiary is located in China. But now if we're gonna see what's happened when the subsidiary is located in Vietnam, we can say that with reference to the dividend at the level of the Vietnamese company, the conclusions are the same so before for the case of the direct investment. Then when the dividend is received in Hong Kong, usually if this dividend is considered a capital income and not a trade income, is not subject to taxation in Hong Kong. And when the dividend is paid to Italian shareholder, if it's possible to apply the participation exemption, and if the holding the Hong Kong company is not considered as a controlled foreign company regime. So in this case also the taxation is 1.2%. This is what's happened in terms of dividend. In terms of capital gain, in Hong Kong should be no taxation, so the taxation is 0%. But in Vietnam still remain a taxation of 20%. Also in this case is enforced between Hong Kong and Vietnam a double tax agreement, but also in this case, like the Italian one, is not possible to avoid the double taxation. This is what's happened in terms of capital gain. The last case, that usually is also one of the investment more common for an Italian structure, Italian indirect investment, is when there is an holding company based in Singapore. So, in terms of dividend, is more or less similar to what happened for an Hong Kong holding company. So more or less is similar. And the Vietnamese company don't have any withholding tax. When the dividends is received in Singapore, considering it as a capital income, is not taxable in Singapore. When is repatriated to Italy, should be taxed to 1.2%. But in terms of capital gain, in this case, could be a difference because there is in force a DTA between Singapore and Vietnam that in principle allow that the tax on the capital gain should be applied only in the country of residence of the seller. So in this case in Singapore. So it means that in this case could be exempt, the capital gain in Singapore, the tax is 0%. So in this case, could, in principle, is possible to avoid the double taxation, and in principle is possible to apply 0%. But in practice, this is not so easy, because the Vietnamese tax authorities scrutinize really careful the possibility that is possible to apply, and that there are all the requirements to apply this DTA. So case by case must really study and analyze carefully. So this is just for provide a brief introduction of what are the main tax consequences when you decide to move for a direct investment or for indirect investment, to give some snapshot. Of course, in my speech, I didn't talk so much about other kind of income, like royalty or interest, but of course we are more than available to talk to you about this kind of income if you want. And just to give you a very, very quick, I don't know if you want to, me? Okay. Just to give you just a very, very, very quick introduction, we are the Italian desk of Deloitte Italy. We are based in Hong Kong, but we cover all the region of Southeast Asia and also China. And we assist all the Italian company and the Vietnamese, in your case, company to come to invest in Italy and vice versa. Our services are more related to the tax structuring and tax planning of the investment, but also we provide the service and we cooperate in order to assist the client, in this case Italian and Vietnamese, to assist them to helping in profit repatriation, study the best tax strategy for an investment, and also to try to achieve and to obtain all the tax incentives that are present in all this region. Talking about tax incentive, now I leave the floor to my colleague Bui Tuan, that really I also want to thank him so much, and Deloitte Vietnam for the support. So thank you so much, Bui.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It will be my pleasure to be here to present and to support our Asia Pacific Deloitte colleagues to present some. Actually, I would give you a brief introduction of the current tax incentive scheme. One of the very attractive factors that earlier Ms. Tham from FIA already presented to you. So the financial related incentive is one of the assisted still quite a key factors to attract foreign investors to come in Vietnam. And this tax incentive has been developing for many years, and for long investor invest in Vietnam, say like 10, 20, even more than that. In Vietnam, they can see that kind of development, and I think that right now the tax incentive in Vietnam is the one of the very, very rare, most attractive in the region. So, okay, first I would say that main the main businesses enjoying the tax incentive in Vietnam is unfortunately more on manufacturing base. So if any investor coming to Vietnam and looking for trading, and then there would be no tax incentive for trading businesses. But beside that, for trading businesses, they can come to Vietnam and utilize the existing very wide range of the foreign free trade agreement between Vietnam and a lot of countries in the world. And if you combine that one, the utilization of the FTA, existing FTA, and the manufacturing base in Vietnam to manufacture a lot of products, and to meet the requirement of the origin when exporting to different destinations of the nations in the world, then you can maximize the profit as well. So basically for the manufacturing based company, the government of Vietnam, we actually there's no distinguish, there's no discrimination between the foreign investor, whether any country they come from, and they can invest in anywhere in the Vietnam territory, of course, not for military purpose. But to have a focus and to concentrate the investment from the government and from the local authority to facilitate the operation of the foreign investor. The government of Vietnam have set a number of what we call the key economic area, KEA, and those KEA mainly covering the industrial zone, export processing zone, economic zone, and some other special zone where we have the very special regulations and the incentive scheme given to those areas. And when the foreign investor come and invest in those key economic area, they can enjoy the well-developed infrastructure, the transportation, the communication, internet, everything. And normally surrounding those areas, the supply of labor is also good, even from the simple labor skill up to the high skill labor sources. Then so in this slide, we just give you a brief summary of the key economic area covering along Vietnam from the north, the middle of Vietnam, and also the south. So you can have some information, and each area also give some key information which industry should be suitable to invest in that area, because where the infrastructure developed, it should be facilitated for certain kind of businesses, and most of them are set up nearby the seaport or the border with other countries, say like China or Cambodia, Laos, so that not only for investor but other local investor, they can manufacture products or doing trading cross border with a lot of other countries, very convenient. I'm not talking about the information about foreign investment in Vietnam, because you have been updated with more detailed information in previous presentation. Okay, coming to the specific investment incentive, especially for this, which will hit the financial and budget from the foreign investors. So we can say that the incentive scheme cover a lot. From the if we look at the value chain of a company, from when it's set up and maintain the relationship with the vendor, the suppliers, doing manufacturing in Vietnam here, and then export or do the domestic sale to many customers, then the incentive cover all kind of those phases. And so at the talking about the overall incentive, it would be on the corporate tax incentive. And for corporate tax incentive, I believe that we observe the incentive scheme applying in a lot of other countries in the region, especially Southeast Asia. Then we have a view that the Vietnam tax incentive scheme in Vietnam is very favorable, and for it depends on the industry or the location or the size of the investment. Then the foreign investor can enjoy the maximum corporate income tax incentive of 4 years tax holiday 0%, followed by 9 years with 50% reduction. And in terms of the tax rate, the standard one is 20%, but for the incentives under the incentive scheme, the investor can enjoy 10%, 15%, or 17%, and with that long period of time. If say a company set up and intend to do business in Vietnam, say in 30, 40 years or 50 years, maybe like one third of the the first period, they can enjoy very low corporate income tax. So that's why a lot of foreign investors, they put huge investment capital into Vietnam to set up manufacturing facilities to either consume in the domestic market, or they export to other countries. And say the cost of production in Vietnam is relatively low, and then they can the margin that they can make is very competitive, and they can make a lot of money. And yeah, and the other part of that is the import duty exemption. Import duty exemptions, other than the standard tariff that a lot of goods importing into Vietnam could enjoy under different FTA, applicable FTA, then in general the foreign investor can enjoy very huge import duty exemption when they set up the facilities in Vietnam. For all kind of goods and machinery and equipment imported to form fixed assets in Vietnam is all duty free. Of course, they have to comply with certain procedures, to register the list and to enjoy the duty exemption. And along with that, when they do the when they start the production, they can also enjoy the free duty on certain area where the material imported into Vietnam also subject to 0% of duty. And if they do the manufacturing for export, yes, totally the import duty and import VAT also exempted. Yeah, and of course they have to follow certain conditions and the procedures to enjoy it. Yeah. And for large scale manufacturing, if they do a lot of manufacturing for export, they can also enjoy the very special scheme, which I think also available in a lot of countries. We call the outright economic operator, yeah, AEO. Yeah, for that one, they can get rid of a lot of burdens in terms of the custom procedures and compliance, things like that, which help to speed up a lot of the rotation and the cycle of the production and inventory cycle. And other than that, for the cost-based incentive. The government of Vietnam does allow the foreign the investor to accelerate the asset depreciation. Of course, it has to be it has to be in the condition that even if the company accelerate the depreciation, it still make profit, something like that. And for the company investing in the R&D activities, they also have a lot of incentive in terms of deductible expensive, subject to corporate income tax. So for the subject of the foreign investor, as I mentioned earlier, so for investor investing in the key economic areas, they automatically got certain incentive, and if they further meet other requirement in terms of the industry or specific what we call the difficulty socio-economic area, then they can have the highest level of the incentive scheme. Yeah, and Vietnam government still promote a lot of investment in terms of high technology industry, or high tech product, or the supporting supporting industry as well, and a lot of other areas as you can see on the screen. And one kind of special incentive is given to what we call the mega scale project, where they invest at least as I see roughly about 250 million US investment project. Then they can, no matter industry that they are operating, no matter the location that they put the facilities, then they can enjoy the highest tax incentive scheme. Yeah. And so overall, I think that it is very potential for not only Italian investor but also other foreign investor to come to Vietnam to join the incentive. And we are here, we in Deloitte Vietnam here, together with our connection with the Italian desk in Asia Pacific, we can support you, to find the what we call the strategic location for investment to best utilize the current incentive, and also other favorable things offered by the local authorities as well. So if you have any questions or concern about the current incentives in Vietnam, just we can share at the later section. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the representative from Deloitte, for the very useful information for those who plan to come to Vietnam to invest also, sure. And now, last but not least, the speech from Vietnam representative will give us a better understanding for the experiences and concrete examples on how to set up a company in Vietnam and what need to do to know. And so now I would like to invite on the stage Mr. Alessandro Pedrinoni, CEO of Vietnam Asia Pacific, for the speak, and that I think is very useful. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you, Ambassador. A special thank also for ICHAM and my friends Kuyet and Michele for all the support. I also want to take the opportunity here to say that the support of ICHAM for Italian companies setting up their presence in Vietnam is very useful and very strong. And I think especially I encourage also our clients and SMEs to seek for the support of the Chamber. So thank you very much. So I'm not going to talk again about the leading sectors in Vietnam, so don't worry, because I think we've been reiterating the concept very much. I'm just going to spend a few words, and then I will give the stage to my colleague from FIDINAM Vietnam. just a few words about what we do. Basically, we are a boutique consulting firm based in Italy, in other countries in Europe, as well as in Asia Pacific. So we have a direct presence from China to Hong Kong, where I'm based, Ho Chi Minh City, Singapore, and Australia. So our mission is to assist European companies to structure their investment in the region, as well as Asian companies structuring and looking their investments in Europe. So we aim to bridge these different regions, and we provide our support, in this case, both from Italy and from Vietnam. Voila, I'm going to skip this. So I'm not going to make it long for the range of services that we provide. Basically, we can assist clients from, let's say, what we call market entry services, meaning we assist clients to assess their opportunities in terms of feasibility of their plan in the country, as well as in terms of compliance and all the support we can give considering the application of the country of origin of the investment, as well as the country of destination of the investment. So I'm going to skip this one because it's too detailed. We have a team. In Fidinam, we strongly believe it's about people also when we make things happen in terms of how to invest or how to bring Italian companies here. It's a lot about also putting people together, creating multicultural environments, exchanging know-how, experience, in order to create a prosperous environment. So, and what we try to do also in our team in Vietnam, where we have a combination of professionals, local professionals and foreign professionals. This is to create an environment friendly for the foreign investors, and also with the right know-how in order to follow up properly in the jurisdiction where we have a direct presence. So this is for us is very important. Before giving the stage to my colleague, and today we will speak about some general steps required in order to set up a company in Vietnam, and without, of course, we don't aim to give the entire details of the topic, because the time is not much, but at least you will see some guidelines, as well as a practical case. And it's interesting coming from the example that also our friend Frank gave to us about how to invest directly or indirectly. So we will take an example that we follow with a client that actually used Singapore, setting up an investment holding in order to land in Vietnam. So it's interesting to see from experience what are the preferred options for the clients and how we can help them, and to benefit from the tax regime, particularly for the passive income, in this case, that we've been discussing. Just a few words about, I think, two very interesting points from Ms. Tham about the fact that investors already present in China, they are not necessarily disinvesting China to invest in Vietnam. This is something we see a lot. We work with Italian companies in China from our Shanghai office as well, and we see as Vietnam as an addition to their strategy, not as an alternative. As an addition, why? Because, of course, Vietnam is becoming more and more competitive, because it's connected to Southeast Asia, because it creates an effective environment to further develop a presence. So also in a strategy of a risk diversification, Vietnam makes a lot of sense, and I think can compete very well with other countries in Southeast Asia and provide a strong alternative to further investments in the region, not an alternative to disinvest from China and invest here. So I think this is an important point to highlight. And also from my friend Olderigo, the comment about Italian companies being in the supply chain of German investors. We see not only German investors, but we see also in the supply chain of also American investors as well. So we have clients who landed here in Vietnam because of they are part of the supply chain. And I think this is a vocation of Italian companies, SMEs, with a high content of technology, but maybe not big in size. So here comes the challenge for us to go explain what is the opportunity and connect the Italian company with the opportunity that maybe is already in Vietnam and now looking for business partner in order to deliver the final product. So I think this is a mission we have also as advisor to explain this complexity and also to connect the opportunities. But that's all of from my side today. So thank you very much. I leave the stage to my colleague, Tao Phuong.
So, good afternoon to everybody, to everyone, and also to audience connecting from other parts of Asia, and also good morning to audience connecting from Europe. Thank you a lot for your support and participation in the event today. As said by Alexandro, I would like to take these great opportunities in order to briefly introduce you about the legal procedure to set up a foreign invested company in Vietnam, and also to present a practical case in order to illustrate, to let you know how we support foreign investors doing business in Vietnam. So let's start with the first part of my presentation, which is about the legal procedure for setting up a company in Vietnam. So before setting up a company in Vietnam, one of the first questions that foreign investors may have is which commercial presence is the suitable option for them. So the answer is depends. It really depends on the business expansion plans of the investor at that moment. In Vietnam, talking about the commercial presence, we have company, we have representative office, and we have branch. Let's talk about the simplest organization, rep office. So similar to other jurisdictions, rep office in Vietnam are not allowed to do the profit generating activity. Its activity just limited to market research and also promotion activity to promote activity of their matter business in Vietnam. And please remember that before setting up a rep office in Vietnam, foreign investor has to put their business operation in their country for at least 1 year. Next, we have branch. I would say that branch is not the common choice of foreign investor in Vietnam. This because of is the limits on business sector and also rather complicated entry procedure in comparison with the rep office or subsidiary company. The compliance procedure of branch is rather similar to the ones of the company, but the operation function is less convenient. Foreign investors are allowed to set up branch to perform just a certain of service, as you can see in the list. In case foreign investor would like to set up the branch to do either service, they need approval from higher authority. And also, before setting up a branch in Vietnam, foreign investors are required to put their offshore business into operation for at least 5 years. And last, we have company. So in Vietnam, we have private enterprise, partnership, limited liability company, or so-called LLC, and joint stock company. Most of the company, most of foreign invested company in Vietnam are established in Vietnam as LLC or joint stock company. The reason making these two company types preferred by both domestic and international investors is the limited liability, meaning that shareholders of these two companies are responsible for the debts and other financial obligation of the company to the extent of the capital amount that they inject in the company. So for direct foreign investment in Vietnam can take the form of 100% foreign-owned company or joint stock company. Talking about joint stock company, so far the government of Vietnam just required the participation of local investors, just a few business, such as advertising service, custom clearance service, and some transportation service. And the foreign capital limitation can be found in the international treaty or the local regulation. But for most of business now in Vietnam, foreign investors are allowed to set up 100 foreign-owned company to perform the target business in Vietnam. So in order to set up a company in Vietnam, foreign investors need to go through 2 steps. The step 1 is applying for an investment registration certificate. These certificates will have the information of investor, the target business location, and also investment incentive, if any. Following the IRC, the foreign investor needs to apply another application to obtain the enterprise registration certificate. The company in Vietnam will be officially formed on the days of the enterprise registration certificate. However, for some special case, the legal procedure to have a company incorporated might be different. Here we have two special cases. The first special is for investment projects subject to investment policy approval. So for some investment projects, such as the project need the relocation of people, or the project need the change of the land use right purpose, foreign investor need to obtain an investment policy approval before going with the application for IRC and ERC. However, foreign investors who are setting up small and medium-sized innovative startups, they are not required to obtain an investment registration certificate, but they can go straight with the application for enterprise registration certificates to have the company incorporated. So when talking about setting up a company in Vietnam, so there are important notes that foreign investor must pay attention before and also after the company is incorporated. So the first important note I would like to talk today is about the capital structure of foreign invested company. So the capital structure of foreign invested company can combine the charter or contributed capital and long-term loan capital. The charter capital is the capital that foreign investors need to contribute into the capital bank accounts of Vietnamese company within 90 days from the day the company is incorporated. Long-term loans mean a loan having term more than 1 year, and it is optional. This means that in case investor has planned on using a long-term loan capital, so the long-term loan capital must be written in the incorporation application. Otherwise, it is not mandatory to mention it in the application. The second important note that we would like to bottom line today is the capital contribution. As I just said, the investor will have 90 days to contribute the capitals as committed in the application into the capital bank account of the company. And the asset can be used to contribute at the capital in Vietnam will be Vietnamese dong, convertible foreign currencies, gold, the value of land use right, values of technical know-how, and any asset that can be exceeded in VND. So if the capital contributor fails or insufficiently contribute the capital as committed, and the company will have 30 days from the day that the capital were due to be contributed in full, submit an application to the authority to amend the capitals in the license in accordance with the paid amount. Otherwise, if the company fails to do so, an administrative penalty will be imposed. The third important note is about legal representative. So legal representatives is the person who can behalf of the company to perform rights and obligations derived from the transaction of the company. We need the person on behalf of the company to work with the authority, to work with any third party, with client partner, and also to sign the document agreement on behalf of the company. So in Vietnam, a company can have one or more than one legal representative, and they must have at least one legal representative, must be the resident of Vietnam. So in case the company has more than one legal representative, so the rights and obligation of each legal representative must be specified in the company charter. If the company charter keeps silent on this, so it means that all the legal representative will have the same authority before any third party, but also they will have a joint responsibility for any damage caused to the company in accordance with the law. And the last important note that I would like to present today is the list of restricted sectors and conditional business life. So according to the Decree 31 issued in 2021, so Vietnam has 25 business life which is restricted from foreign investment. You can find the full list in the appendix 1 of this agree. Besides, according to this degree, we have an 58 sector which is considered as the conditional business applicable to foreign investor. So the condition here might be include the investment form, the capital limitation. I mean the foreign capital limitation, which can be filed in the applicable international treaty or local regulation. So before setting up a company in Vietnam, so one of the first things that you need to do is to check whether the target business is subject to the list of restricted business or subject to the conditional business. So I just finished the first part of my presentation very quickly about the legal procedure to have the company incorporated in Vietnam and also the important notes. So the second part will be a practical case. So in Vietnam, our client coming from various countries, coming from the US, from Europe, and also other parts of Asia. But today, because we are talking about the opportunity for Italian investor doing business in Vietnam, so I would like to present a case that we have with an Italian client. So the Italian, our client was in Italian group. They are producing garment product. So they were looking for the opportunity to doing business in Vietnam, and the business benefits that they aim to achieve include the proximity of existing client in the region, the saving labor costs, the optimized logistics, and also the subholding structure to optimize the investment and also to manage the government of the company. So in this case, the client asked us an advice on the feasibility of the intended business, capitalization, business condition, factory location, and also the choice of jurisdiction, which allow our client to benefit from the most favorable condition. Also, this client asked our support to perform on the legal procedure in order to allow them to perform the target to run the factory in Vietnam. So at the very starting point, we provide to this client a memorandum analyzing on the investment condition, required license, the custom duty and VAT impact on the product that they produce in Vietnam based on the local regulation and also applicable free trade agreement, including EVFTA. So our memorandum can be summarized in some point, like firstly for the investment condition. For the production of garment textile, Vietnam allow foreign investor to open 100% foreign owned to perform this business, because our client will just have will be the only one shareholder. So the company type will be limited liability company with one member. Because the production activity might have impacts on environment, so most of production activity in Vietnam now are required to locate in industrial park. And if our client locates in the industrial park that we introduce to them, so the corporate income tax will be, as our friend from Deloitte already introduced, the corporate income tax will be 70% for the 10-year period with 2 years of tax exemption, followed by 4 years with the 50% of tax reduction. And also in terms of custom duty, for the good produced in Vietnam, it will enjoy the custom elimination and also reduction in accordance with the applicable treaty, applicable FTA. So in order to give our client the answer about the structure of their business, we took several scenarios into consideration, including the scenario that having Italian company to set up the company in Vietnam directly, or having an individual which is one of the key person of the client to set up the company or using a holding company, as our speaker have just shared. So our conclusion for the client is that we advise our client to set up a holding company in Singapore and using that holding company to invest in Vietnam. So from the slide here, you can see the different tax implication. So why we choose Singapore? Because we can use Singapore as a subholding. It can use as a treasury center for the investment in the region. And also the distribution, the dividend distribution from Vietnam to Singapore can be benefits from the tax regime in Vietnam with no withholding tax, as our friend Deloitte has just shared. And one of the most important thing is that the government of the holding company and the relationship with other shareholders can be regulated in common law jurisdiction. So in this case, what we did to have this client. So in this case, because the client follow our advice, means that they set up a holding company in Singapore, followed by a company in Vietnam. So our team in Singapore, they have this client to set up the company in Singapore, followed by a corporate bank account in order to receive the capital from investor from Italy. So, but in Vietnam, we has a lot of things to do. So in Vietnam, first of all, we have this client to identify the location, which means that we were looking for a factory for this client based on the requirement of them. We contacted with either mainly industrial park in a different city to provide our client available option. Also, we check the legal documents of these location in order to ensure that the target business of client can be implemented in that area. And eventually, our client decided to rent a 700 square meters factory in Nhon Trạch 3 in Dong Nai province. We have this client to negotiate the price, term and condition of the MOU, and also finalize the MOU for leasing the location. Following the MOU, we have this client to set up a company in Vietnam, meaning that we have this client to apply for the IRC and ERC. After the company is incorporated, we have some post-licensing tax provided to this client. As I told you, for production activity, it has an impact on the environment. And based on the information provided by our client about the production capacity and also the stairway industrial waste generated. So we confirm to our client that they need to perform the registration of investment protection plan, which is now the environment license in accordance with the current regulation. And also this client needs to obtain a certificate of firefighting and prevention. For this work, Vietnam will not work directly because this is something beyond our scope of work. So in this regard, we have our client to identify the qualified local service provider, and we were on their behalf to work with these service provider to finalize, to finish the procedure in order to comply with the local regulation. At the same time, we have the client to open the bank accounts at a licensed bank in Vietnam in order to have them, allow them to make the capital contribution within the time limit. And in terms of HR, yes, we also have the client to look for the local worker. We even intended the interview with this client because it was very early stage, and my clients were in the foreign country. They were not in Vietnam. So we have them to sort out the profile, have them to prepare the offer letter, probation contract, and also labor contract. For foreign expats, we have them to apply for working visa and also the temporary resident card, working permits, to allow them to stay and work in Vietnam for a long time. And once the client finished the procedure for the environment protection and firefighting prevention, we work with DHL Vietnam to have our client to import and install all the necessary machine and factor and equipment needed for the production in Vietnam. And we didn't stop our support from that, but until now, we're still working with this client through accounting and tax service, tax filing service, payroll service, and also monthly consultancy service. So right now, we have been with this client for more than 3 years, and I can proudly say that we are growing together. And this is not the only story of this client, but also our client of Vietnam inside and outside Vietnam. So actually, this slide already ends my presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention, and all of the questions are welcome in the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro and Phương Thao, for their speech. Very useful and interesting. And now, as our schedule, we arrive now on Q&A session. And I don't know if here in presence here somebody would ask some questions here before, and now we will go to online audience. I see here. Actually, we have received many questions from our public before the workshop, but actually now I see that there is an Italian company who is interested to know more about incentive, and that is here the question: are there some incentive for a company that has already invested in Vietnam starting 2011? Okay, I don't know if someone who want to, yeah, yes, yes, sure. I know that Azanastri is 1 hour member, and I know that they want to expand their activities in Vietnam. So now it's clear. And so, would you like to respond? Yes.
Okay, for company already set up, incorporated in Vietnam, and assuming that in that question is the company set up in 2011, right? 11, right? So probably they already finished the in incentive period. So if they want to expand the business without setting up a new project, I mean within obtaining a new investment registration certificate (IRC), then they can they can they can inform the licensing authority, and if the business activity or the location is still qualified for the incentive scheme, for that what we call the investment expansion, it is still subject to in incentive scheme, but of course it is lower than the standard one.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tuan, for these answers. And now I don't know if there are more questions here. Okay, thank you.
Kuyet?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? This is Mariano.
Yes, please. Mariano, our desk in Trentino Antora DJ. Please, Mariano.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is, among the, let's say, the topics interesting for coming to Vietnam, I didn't hear anything about health, precise medicine, assistant, and all the companies that can give a contribution to the Vietnam medicine and health. Is because it's not interesting, or is because of the time you are living regarding, let's say, the management of these topics? This is the first question. The second question is related to innovation. So I hear about innovation and in innovative companies. I didn't hear about an integrated approach that is also considered the scientific and the research. Because I think if you want to have a nice relation between Vietnam and Italy, you want also to look at the future, and to look at new product means also to establish a very strong connection and strong relation regarding research and innovation. So I would like to hear some comment about these two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mariano. I don't know. Yes? Okay, please.
Hello, Rodrigo speaking here. Yeah, I can address the first question regarding the pharmaceutical sector. That's right. I mean, pharma is a sector that is increasingly important in Vietnam, and we didn't mention just because in the interest of time. There are, so many, there have been mentioned so many sectors, but for sure, I would say, driven by the rising personal income. So. And also the aging of the population in the urbanized area like Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. There are significant analysis that says that pharma companies should for sure invest in Vietnam because market trend here is on the rise. So that's also a very important sector to be mentioned. Thanks for reminding that.
One of the information that I would share about the commercial in Vietnam, that the Italian company should know about the policy of Vietnam in the commercial sector is that you can produce but you cannot distribute the commercial in Vietnam. So you think about it, you can distribute only the one you produce in Vietnam, but for the one that you import in Vietnam, you cannot distribute. So this one should be concerned by the Italian company when you invest in Vietnam. And the next question about the innovation, as you know that the innovation sector is a priority sector of Vietnam at the moment. And we even set up a national innovation center, belongs to the Ministry of Planning and Investment. And we have in the decision 29 issue in 2021, we even have a special incentive for innovation sector. So if you are interested in innovation sector, you should research about the information of decision 29 for more information.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Onderigo and Mr. Thanh Tâm for the answers. And I see that there is also another question, maybe very simple, about the EVFTA. Actually, now as you know, we have already EVFTA signed from Vietnam and Europe Union. So maybe our Vice Chairman, Mr. Federico Vazzoli, can say something more detail, something about that, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. What is exactly the question about the EVFTA? Because yes, so the answer is yes. There is bilateral means between two parties, so the parties being Italy and Vietnam. And the answer is yes, in that there are investment protection agreements that were signed before the European Union and Vietnam entered into negotiations for the EVIPA, the Europe-Vietnam Investment Protection Agreement. As Ambassador Hung from Rome earlier stated, the Investment Protection Agreement has not been ratified. It has been approved by the European Parliament, but then needs to be ratified by each single member state of the European Union. Because this has not happened yet, then the current investment protection agreement between Italy and Vietnam applies. So that's one thing. The second thing was mentioned before by both Deloitte and FIDIM, which is the double taxation treaty, so the DTA, and that is of course bilateral because tax is a national matter, not a European matter, with the exception of VAT, but anyway. So yes, and then the EU-Vietnam free trade agreement is of course including Italy as a member state of the European Union. I hope that that answers the question, if I understood it correctly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Federico Vazzoli. And now I see that here there is a question and that maybe from Vietnam we can have an answer. In which sectors in Vietnam most pushing or being most open to foreign import-export relations, and particularly with Italy? Okay, is clear the question?
So the question is about the industry sectors. All right. Okay, I think we've been elaborating what are the opportunities in terms of import and export and investments. I will say that, of course, as we briefly mentioned before, Italian companies do have a vocation to for SMEs, for instance, to be part of larger supply chains, as well as to manufacture process equipment or transformation technologies that can be part of projects in Vietnam. So that could boost also from a commercial standpoint of view, and then as a later stage to facilitate the FDI to have a direct presence in the country. Then, as I say, I think another good factor is the increasing purchasing power of the middle class in Vietnam, which is I think it's really a powerful trend in terms of qualified labor, but also in terms of more and more sophisticated customers. And I think as the more the customers are sophisticated, the more Italy has an opportunity, because Italy is exporting the world, quality, design, fashion, luxury. So I think in this regard, Italian companies can be active in developing their commercial relationship with Vietnam.
Thank you very much. And I see that there are another questions about, one moment please. What type of business would benefit from the current trends? So we have said before for trends and opportunities for Italian companies. So what type of business would benefit more? Okay.
Thank you, Keith. No, it was actually part of the presentation. We said during the presentation has been, actually has been reminded many times that the business and the industry that will be more interest to come in Vietnam, where technology and modernizing agriculture, as were mentioned, by the ambassador, and then, as we said, also those industries that are strictly related with the sector of Vietnam that are booming. And basically, we are talking about footwear, fashion and apparel again, and furniture. And again, we are not discussing, we are not mentioning only those who are engaged in the consumer business, but also those that are manufacturing capital goods and machinery that are integrated in the value chain of this sector. I think this was actually the main message of today.
Maybe I add one concept we didn't cover today. It's about IT and software development. I think this is also a very interesting field, and we have been assisting clients investing in Vietnam, relying on software developed in Vietnam for international projects. So I think this is a very interesting opportunity for blockchain-related projects as well. using Vietnam developers in order to build platforms under blockchain technology. So this sector is a promising sector for the future that could be an opportunity. Thank you.
And what about another question about that? Have been made any investment in green business like renewable energy or electric car, motor, etc.?
I'm aware of one, but it's over now after the review of tariffs, but there has been an Italian JV in Vung Tau a few years ago in the solar power industry. But after, it was a small one, but after the government revised the tariffs, then it was not scalable enough for the Italian company and therefore not viable any longer, so they sold their share. But if the question is, have there been any green investments in Italy, from Italy into Vietnam, from what I know personally and also as a member and now vice chairman of the chamber, yes, I am aware of that one, not of others.
We are also not aware of other investment in the renewable energy, but for sure we read the statistic, and there, the market for renewable energy, it's so large. We are talking about 700 billion US. So it's for sure a market that has attracted so many investment by other countries, and so the Italians are more welcome now. And also the forecast for the future trend, they are also very interesting, because we are talking about 30% growth rate for wind energy, and 15% for solar energy of annual growth rate. So we are, in front of a number that for sure should trigger the attention of the Italian company engaged in the renewable energy business.
I could add about information about this related to the new renewable energy. You may know that this is a very hot sector in Vietnam right now, and we receive a lot of interest from the investor from all over the world, and especially from even from Japan, from Korea, and recently I received a lot of interest from the European company, for example, Denmark, Austria. And I think that a message that I would like to send to the Italian company, that you should be hurry, because a lot of investors already interested, and the capacity for the renewable energy in Vietnam is now going to that over the demand. So you should be hurry. And one of the difficulties related to the renewable energy capacity right now is that after the COP26, our Prime Minister already asked the Ministry of Industry and Commercial to modify their master plan of power to cut down the natural resources energy and move to the renewable energy. But that master plan is still in the processing, and if that master plan cannot finish, all of the projects related to the renewable energy have to wait. This is one of the information.
I would like just to comment and add a few words on the last question. Speaking of renewables and Italian companies, Italian renewable companies' presence in Vietnam, I would like to recall that the largest Italian renewable player, which is Enel Green Power, so the unit of Enel Group responsible for the management of renewable energy, has established its presence in Vietnam, especially in Ho Chi Minh City, and this is a concrete sign of the attention to which Italian companies look, and the Italian productive sector in general look for the investment opportunities in Vietnam related to renewables. other Italian players operating in green energy sector are already present in Vietnam as well. I mentioned, for instance, Bestiani Engineering Company, and since it was mentioned at the beginning of the seminar, the GIFE, the Green Euro Economy Foreign and Exhibition, that was the most important European exhibition on green economy organized in Vietnam, and Italy has been present with a delegation of 12 companies operating in green economy sector. So that is just to comment on that.
Yes, thank you very much for the answers. And proudly, we can say also that back Bestiani Engineering Company is also our member. So, and sorry, I see that. Sorry. Okay. Maybe last questions for Mr. Tham. How about the regulation, duties and rules, especially on wine and precious imports, for example, gold, jewelry made in Italy? Yeah, just import from Italy to Vietnam for wines or precious imports.
Related to import and export is under of Ministry of Commercial, not the Ministry of Planning and Investment. Yeah, but I think that we have no regulation to forbid the importation of wine, and I'm not sure about the distribution. Not the import is, yes, but the distribution, I don't know the regulation.
It is actually, as you know, food and wine is quite an important industry for and there are a number of players here. Yes, there is a decree of 2017 regulating the duties, because wine falls into the categories of the EU Vietnam FTA. There is a reduction of import duties that right now should be around 50%. Then you have special consumption taxes to disincentivize the consumption of alcohol. Then you have VAT. By the way, Vietnam, this could be quite interesting for our Italian companies. As far as I know, I made a research about it. Vietnam is the country with the highest consumption of alcohol in Southeast Asia. The main product being beer, of course. You see the Bia Hoi around, but also, I know you. And wine is also quite important, and not so surprisingly, Italian wines are competing against French wines within European friendship, and from time to time, the export of Italian wines into Vietnam is actually higher than that of French wines. As you rightly pointed out, Ms. Tham, the distribution, you need to have an import license here in the country and then a distribution license. You cannot just do it so freely. And that leads me to yet another point, which is the importance of properly protecting intellectual property rights in the country before entering into negotiations with potential distributors. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Our workshop is now finished, and we are perfectly on time. And on behalf of the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, I would like to thank our His Excellencies Antonio Alessandro, Ambassador of Italy to Vietnam, His Excellencies Dương Hải Ưng, Ambassador of Vietnam to Italy, our partners for organizing this event, and especially Mr. Tham from MOIP. I think as Italian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, as also as Fidinam or Deloitte, we are